A peaceful night in a millionaire's mansion, a pregnant woman, a golf club, and a husband who planned the perfect murder. But this isn't just another domestic violence case. This is the daughter of one of America's most powerful CEOs, and her father is about to show the world what happens when you hurt the wrong family. What follows is a calculated trap, a confession caught on tape, and a courtroom battle that will grip the nation. If you've ever wondered how far a father will go to protect his child, stay with us. You won't believe how this ends. Drop a comment with where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe. You're going to want to follow this story to the very end. The security footage would later show exactly what happened at 11:47 p.m. in the Brennan estate. A woman's body dragged across Italian marble, a blood trail glistening under crystal chandeliers, a broken golf club lying near the grand staircase. But at 9 p.m. that evening, nobody could have predicted how quickly perfection would shatter. Claire Brennan stood in front of the bedroom mirror, her hand resting on her 7-month pregnant belly. The black gown hung perfectly despite her changing shape. She'd chosen it for tonight's charity gala, the last public appearance before the baby arrived. Her reflection showed a woman who had everything: wealth, beauty, a successful art gallery, and a husband everyone admired. That husband now appeared behind her in the mirror. Tyler Brennan, 32 years old, managing partner at Sterling and Cross Investment Bank, Yale graduate, Connecticut's most eligible bachelor before he'd married the billionaire's daughter. His hands settled on her shoulders, warm and possessive. "You look beautiful," he said, his breath against her neck. Claire smiled, but something felt wrong. It had felt wrong for weeks now, maybe months. Small things. The way he checked her phone while she showered. How he always knew where she'd been, who she'd talked to. The questions that felt like interrogations disguised as concern. "Are we running late?" she asked. "Your father called. He wants us there by 9:30. Tyler's hands tightened slightly. "He's making a big announcement tonight. Something about succession planning." Claire turned to face him. "He didn't mention anything to me. Maybe he wanted it to be a surprise." Tyler's smile didn't reach his eyes. It never did anymore. She realized, how long had she been ignoring that? They arrived at the Brennan Industries headquarters, where the gala was held. The top floor had been transformed into something from a dream. White orchids everywhere, string quartet playing, 200 of Connecticut's wealthiest citizens mingling beneath art installations Claire had curated herself. Her father, Richard Brennan, stood near the bar. 58 years old, silver-haired, commanding. He'd built Brennan Industries from a small manufacturing company into an empire worth billions. When he saw Claire, his face lit up with genuine warmth. "There's my girl." He kissed her cheek, then shook Tyler's hand. "Son." Claire watched the interaction carefully. Her father's smile seemed forced. Or was she imagining things lately she'd been second-guessing everything? "Dad, Tyler mentioned an announcement." Richard's expression flickered. "Later. Let's enjoy the evening first." But the evening felt strange. Claire noticed her mother Olivia watching Tyler with an odd intensity. Her brother Nathan, normally relaxed and joking, seemed tense whenever Tyler spoke. Even the family lawyer kept glancing at Tyler with barely concealed distaste. At 10 p.m., Tyler excused himself for a phone call. "Work emergency. 5 minutes." He was gone 20. Claire found herself alone near the windows, looking out at the city lights. Her friend Jessica Palmer approached, Tyler's executive assistant at the bank. They'd become friendly over the past year. "Beautiful party," Jessica said. "Thank you for coming." Claire paused. "Jessica, can I ask you something? Has Tyler seemed different lately at work? I mean," Jessica's expression changed. For just a moment, something like pity crossed her face. "Different how? I don't know. Stressed, distant. He's been working long hours." Jessica looked away. "Claire, I should tell you something." But Tyler returned then, his hand immediately finding Claire's lower back. Possessive, controlling. "What are we talking about?" His tone was light, but his grip tightened. "Just work," Jessica said quickly. Too quickly. "I should go. Good night." "Claire." The drive home was silent. Tyler's jaw clenched as he drove, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Claire felt her heart racing. Something was coming. She could feel it the way animals sense earthquakes before they strike. They pulled into the circular driveway of their home, a wedding gift from her father. 5 bedrooms, pool, 3 acres of manicured lawn, a prison disguised as paradise. Inside, Tyler poured himself whiskey, his third of the night. Your father barely looked at me tonight. That's not true. Don't contradict me. His voice went cold. I saw how he looked at me, like I wasn't good enough, like I never was. Claire backed toward the stairs. Tyler, you're drunk. Let's talk in the morning. I'm not finished talking now. He followed her into the living room. That's when she saw it. His iPad on the coffee table. Screen still glowing. He'd left it unlocked. In 2 years of marriage, she'd never seen it unlocked. Curiosity won. She picked it up. Tyler lunged forward. Put that down. But she'd already seen the email preview. From Jessica Palmer. Subject line, 3 more months. Claire opened it. Her world ended. The email was explicit, detailed. Plans for after the baby was born, after the divorce, after Claire was out of the picture. But worse than the affair was what came next. Financial documents attached, life insurance policies, spreadsheets calculating net worth, custody arrangements, settlement amounts. And at the bottom, Jessica's final line, the insurance money will set us up perfectly, just like we planned. Claire looked up at her husband, really looked at him, and for the first time she saw the monster wearing the mask. You were going to kill me. Tyler's expression didn't change. You were never supposed to see that. The words hung in the air like poison. Claire's hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the iPad. Her mind raced, trying to process what she'd just read. This couldn't be real. This had to be some terrible misunderstanding. Tyler, what is this? Her voice sounded small, foreign to her own ears. He took a slow sip of whiskey, completely calm. That terrified her more than anything. Exactly what it looks like. You're having an affair with Jessica. I wouldn't call it an affair, more of a partnership. He set down his glass and walked toward her. Claire backed away instinctively. Jessica understands ambition. She understands what it takes to get ahead in this world. You never did. I loved you. Past tense. Already past tense. Tyler laughed, sharp and cruel. You love the idea of me, the Yale graduate, the successful banker, the perfect son-in-law for Richard Brennan. His face twisted with contempt. Do you know what it's like being married to you? Everyone always comparing me to your father, always wondering if I'm good enough, if I earn my position or just married into it. So you plan to murder me. Claire's voice rose. For money, for revenge, for freedom. He grabbed the iPad from her hands. You were supposed to stay stupid and grateful, play the perfect wife, have the baby, sign whatever I put in front of you. But you're just like your father, too smart for your own good. Claire's mind spun. She had to get out, call her father, call the police. But Tyler stood between her and the front door. Her phone was upstairs in her purse. Think. The baby, she whispered. Tyler, I'm 7 months pregnant with your child. Something flickered in his eyes. For a moment, she thought she'd reached him. Then his expression hardened again. That thing isn't mine. The accusation hit like a physical blow. What? Of course it's yours. I don't care whose it is. The insurance policy covers pregnancy complications. Tragic accidents happen all the time. He stepped closer. Did you know that murder-suicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women? Nobody questions it. Hormones, depression, stress. Everyone understands. Horror washed over Claire. This wasn't a spontaneous confession. He'd thought this through, planned it. How long had he been planning her death? You're insane. I'm practical. Tyler pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. Here, let me show you practical. He turned the screen toward her. A photograph. Her brother Nathan's car in a parking garage. And standing beside it, a man Claire didn't recognize. The timestamp read 6 p.m. tonight, during the gala. Who is that? Someone who'll make sure Nathan has a tragic accident if you do anything stupid. Call the police, Nathan dies. Tell your father Nathan dies. Try to run. Tyler's smile was monstrous. Well, you can guess what happens. Claire's legs gave out. She sank onto the sofa, her hand instinctively protecting her belly. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand how completely you've lost. He crouched in front of her, his face inches from hers. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, you're going to sign divorce papers. You'll give me $20 million in full custody of the baby. You'll tell everyone the marriage didn't work out, that you're moving to Europe to start over, and then you'll disappear. Disappear. You're a rich girl with mental health issues. Everyone knows pregnancy makes women unstable. If Claire Brennan checks into a Swiss clinic and never comes home, who's going to question it? His hand stroked her cheek. She flinched. Or option two, you refuse, and Nathan dies tonight. Then you have an accident. I'm devastated. Your family is destroyed, and I inherit everything anyway. Your choice. Claire couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This man she'd married, shared a bed with, created life with. He was describing her death like a business transaction. I need time, she gasped. You have until tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Sign the papers, or Nathan dies. Tyler stood, straightened his tie. Oh, and don't bother trying to warn him. I've got people watching him. Any unusual activity and the timeline moves up. He walked to the bar, poured another drink like they'd just discussed dinner plans. Claire sat frozen, her mind screaming. There had to be a way out. Had to be. Then she remembered. Her father's announcement tonight. He'd looked worried. Had he known something, suspected Tyler. The announcement, she said quietly. What was it? Tyler's back stiffened. Nothing that matters now. What was it? He turned and she saw real anger for the first time. Your father wanted to talk about my position at the company. Apparently someone's been questioning my qualifications, raising concerns about my investments. He was going to launch an internal audit. Tyler drained his glass. That's when I knew it. I had to accelerate the timeline. So that was it? Her father had been trying to protect her. He'd sensed something wrong and started investigating. And Tyler had decided to strike first. How long? Claire asked. How long have you been planning this? Tyler considered the question. About 6 months. Right after you got pregnant, Jessica and I ran the numbers. With the baby, you were worth more dead than divorced. Life insurance, inheritance, the trust funds that vest when you have a child. It all made sense. He smiled. We even practiced. Did you know I had a girlfriend before you, Amy Carson? Sweet girl. Also had terrible postpartum depression. Very tragic. The room spun. Amy Carson, she died 3 years ago. The newspapers said suicide. They did, didn't they? Tyler walked toward the hallway where these golf clubs stood. He'd been so proud of them. A gift from Richard on their wedding day, imported from Scotland. $20,000 worth of equipment for a man who barely played. He selected a club, the 9-iron, tested its weight. What are you doing? Claire tried to stand, but her pregnant body was slow, awkward, sending a message. Tyler moved fast. The club swung through the air. You need to understand I'm serious. The first blow hit her shoulder. Claire screamed. The second caught her ribs. She fell, crashing against the coffee table. Pain exploded through her body. The baby. Oh God, the baby. Stop, she gasped. Please, the baby. Tyler stood over her. Club raised. Sign the papers tomorrow, or this is just the beginning. He brought the club down again, and again, and again. Richard Brennan couldn't sleep. He stood in his study at 1 a.m., looking at financial reports that confirmed his worst suspicions. Tyler had been embezzling, small amounts at first, carefully hidden. But over 2 years, he'd stolen nearly $3 million from Brennan Industries accounts. The evidence was damning. Shell companies, falsified invoices, money laundering through offshore accounts. Richard had spent the last 3 weeks building the case, working with forensic accountants and lawyers. He'd planned to confront Tyler after the gala, give him a chance to explain. But something had been wrong tonight. The way Tyler looked at Claire, the possessive grip on her arm, the barely contained rage when Richard had mentioned the audit. His phone rang, unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Brennan, a man's voice, professional, tense. This is Officer Sullivan with Hartford Police. I'm at your daughter's residence. There's been an incident. Time stopped. What kind of incident? Sir, I think you should come here now. Richard's hands shook as he grabbed his keys. He didn't wake Olivia. Couldn't speak the words yet. His driver got them to Claire's house in 12 minutes, running every red light. Police cars filled the driveway. Ambulance lights painted everything red and blue. Richard ran toward the front door. An officer tried to stop him. That's my daughter. Where is she? Sir, you need to. Where is my daughter? A woman in a paramedic uniform appeared. Her face was grim. Mr. Brennan, I'm Sarah Bennett. Your daughter is alive, but she's in critical condition. We're transporting her to Hartford General now. What happened? The paramedic hesitated. It appears to be a domestic assault. Multiple blunt force injuries. She's 7 months pregnant. The baby. We don't know yet. Sir, you need to let us work. They wheeled Claire out on a stretcher. Richard's heart broke. His beautiful daughter, barely recognizable, her face swollen and bruised, blood soaking through the blankets, an oxygen mask covering her mouth, but her eyes were open, barely. Claire, he grabbed her hand. Baby girl, I'm here. Her lips moved behind the mask. Richard leaned closer. Nathan, she whispered. Danger. Tyler, Nathan. Then her eyes closed. We need to go now, the paramedic said. Richard climbed into the ambulance. As they pulled away, he saw Tyler standing on the front lawn, talking to police. Perfectly calm. His shirt was rumpled, his hands clean. He was crying. The performance of a lifetime. Richard pulled out his phone, called Nathan. Dad, it's 1 a.m. Where are you right now? Where are you? Home. Why, what's wrong? Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone. I'm sending security to your apartment. Stay there until I call back. Dad, you're scaring me. Tyler hurt Claire. Bad. She said you're in danger. Richard heard Nathan's sharp intake of breath. I need you to trust me. Don't leave your apartment. Don't contact Tyler. Don't talk to anyone until I call back. Understand? Is she alive? Yes. Barely. Richard's voice broke. Just stay safe. Please. At the hospital, they rushed Claire into surgery. Richard stood in the waiting room, his mind reeling. How had he missed this? He'd built a billion-dollar empire by reading people, predicting their moves, and he'd let a monster marry his daughter. A doctor emerged 2 hours later. Dr. Rachel Foster, trauma surgeon. Her scrubs were stained with blood. Mr. Brennan, your daughter has severe internal injuries. 3 broken ribs, fractured collarbone, severe concussion. We've stabilized her. But, the doctor paused. We had to perform an emergency cesarean. The trauma triggered premature labor. The baby, it's a girl, 2 pounds, 3 ounces. She's in the NICU. Too early to know if there's permanent damage, but she's breathing with assistance. We're doing everything we can. Richard sat down heavily. Can I see Claire? She's in recovery, unconscious. But Mr. Brennan, there's something else. Foster's expression darkened. These injuries, they're not from a fall or an accident. Someone beat your daughter with a weapon. Repeatedly. This was attempted murder. The words crystallized Richard's rage into something cold and focused. I know who did it. The police are waiting to talk to you. Detective Marcus Holland was 45, ex-FBI, with a face that had seen too much cruelty. He sat across from Richard in a private consultation room. Your son-in-law claims she fell down the stairs, Holland said. He's lying. I know. The injury pattern doesn't match. Neither does the blood spatter analysis. We found a golf club with blood and hair on it. Tyler claims he found it on the floor, picked it up to move it before paramedics arrived. Holland's expression was grim. He's smart, contaminated the evidence with his own fingerprints, has a story for everything. My daughter told me Nathan is in danger. Your son, wait by him. Richard explained what Claire had whispered. Holland's face darkened. If Tyler threatened Nathan, he might have someone watching him. Do you have security on your son too? My personal team. Former Secret Service. Good. Keep them close. Holland leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, I need you to understand something. Men like Tyler don't snap. They plan. This wasn't a crime of passion. He thought this through. I know. He's been embezzling from my company. I was going to confront him after the gala. Do you think he knew? Yes. Richard's hands clenched. I think he knew I was closing in, and he decided to strike first. Holland was quiet for a moment. There's something else. Tyler took out a $15 million life insurance policy on your daughter 2 weeks ago, made himself the beneficiary. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about anger or control. Tyler had planned to murder Claire for money. Can you arrest him? Ika, not yet. He's claiming self-defense. Says she attacked him. He defended himself. She fell. Without Claire's testimony or solid physical evidence placing him as the aggressor, it's his word against the crime scene. A good lawyer could argue reasonable doubt. Holland stood. But I'm not giving up. I've seen cases like this before. Men who think they're smarter than everyone else. They always make mistakes. How long before Claire can talk? The doctors don't know. The head injury was severe. She might not remember what happened. Traumatic amnesia is common. After Holland left, Richard sat alone in the waiting room. The wall clock showed 4 a.m. Somewhere in this hospital, his daughter fought for her life. His granddaughter struggled to breathe. And the man responsible walked free. His phone buzzed. Text from Nathan. Dad, there's someone watching my building. Black sedan. Been there for an hour. Richard called Holland back immediately. The detective answered on the first ring. What is it? Someone's watching Nathan's apartment. Black sedan. Could be Tyler's people. I'll send a patrol car. Get a plate number if possible. If Tyler's threatening witnesses, that's another charge we can use. Richard texted his security team, then called Nathan back. Stay inside. My security is on the way. Police too. Don't go near the windows. Dad, what's happening? Who would be watching me? Tyler. He threatened you to control Claire. If she told anyone what he did, he said you'd die. Richard's voice was hard. But you're safe now. I won't let him hurt anyone else in this family. Is Claire going to make it? Richard looked toward the surgical wing where his daughter lay fighting for her life. She has to. She's a Brennan. We don't quit. But as the hours dragged on, Richard felt his certainty waver. Claire had lost so much blood. The head injury was severe. And the baby, so tiny, so fragile. What if this was too much? What if Tyler had won, after all, at 6 a.m.? Dr. Foster returned. Mr. Brennan, Claire is awake. Richard jumped to his feet. Can I see her? For a few minutes, but she's very weak. Don't tire her out. Richard followed the doctor to the ICU. Claire lay in a bed surrounded by machines, tubes and wires connecting her to equipment that beeped softly. Her face was swollen almost beyond recognition. But when she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. Daddy, Richard took her hand gently, afraid he might hurt her. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. The baby. She's alive. In the NICU. They're taking good care of her. Claire's face crumpled. Tyler tried to kill us. I know. Detective Holland is investigating. We're going to make sure Tyler pays for what he did. He threatened Nathan. Said if I told anyone, Nathan would die. Her voice was barely a whisper. Is Nathan okay? He's fine. I have security on him. Tyler can't hurt him. Claire closed her eyes, exhausted from the brief conversation. Richard stayed beside her, holding her hand, watching her breathe. Each breath was a victory. Each heartbeat a defiance of Tyler's violence. He thought about the man he'd welcomed into his family, given a position in his company, trusted with his daughter's happiness. Tyler had fooled everyone with his charm, his credentials, his performance of normalcy, but Richard saw him clearly now. A predator, a monster who'd married Claire not for love, but for money, who'd planned her murder like a business transaction, who'd beaten her with a golf club while she begged for mercy. The rage Richard felt was cold and absolute. He'd built an empire through strategy and patience. Now he'd use those same skills to destroy Tyler Brennan. Dr. Foster appeared in the doorway. Mr. Brennan, you should let her rest. Richard nodded, leaned down to kiss Claire's forehead. Sleep, sweetheart. When you wake up, we'll go see the baby together. In the hallway, he called his head of security. I want 24-hour protection on Claire, Nathan, and the baby. Nobody gets near them without my approval. Understood. Yes, sir. What about Tyler Brennan? Watch him. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to. If he so much as thinks about approaching my family, I want to know about it. Richard's next call was to his lawyer. James, I need you to freeze all of Tyler's assets, bank accounts, credit cards, everything. He's been embezzling from the company. I have proof. File a civil suit immediately. Richard, if he's under criminal investigation, we should coordinate with the police. Do both. I want him buried in legal problems. Make it impossible for him to function. Can you do that? I'll have the paperwork filed by noon. As the sun rose over Hartford, Richard stood at the hospital window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Tyler was probably sleeping peacefully, confident his lies would protect him, convinced he'd gotten away with attempted murder. He had no idea what was coming. Richard Brennan had spent 40 years building one of the most powerful companies in New England. He'd outmaneuvered competitors, survived market crashes, crushed anyone who threatened his business. Now he'd use every resource, every connection, every ounce of power he'd accumulated to destroy the man who'd hurt his daughter. Tyler Brennan thought he was smart, thought he'd planned the perfect crime. He was about to learn the cost of underestimating a father's love and a father's rage. Detective Marcus Holland had worked homicide for 23 years. He'd learned to trust his instincts. And every instinct screamed that Tyler Brennan was guilty. But instincts didn't convict people. Evidence did. He started with Amy Carson. Tyler's ex-girlfriend had died 3 years ago. Official ruling suicide by drug overdose. But the case file revealed inconsistencies. Amy's family insisted she'd never been depressed. Her therapist said she was excited about her future. And 2 weeks before her death, she'd taken out a life insurance policy, $10 million. Beneficiary her boyfriend at the time, Tyler Brennan. He collected the money, Holland asked the insurance investigator. Yes, the family contested it, but ultimately settled. They received a portion and Tyler got the rest, about $4 million after legal fees and splitting with the family. Did anyone investigate him? Briefly, but the evidence supported suicide. Pills, alcohol. Note, everything fit. Who found the body? The investigator checked her notes. Tyler did, called 911, performed CPR, very distraught according to first responders. Holland felt his stomach turn. The same pattern. Tyler finds the victim, plays the devastated partner, collects the insurance money. He needed to talk to Amy's family. Amy's mother, Patricia Carson, lived in Rhode Island. She was 62, her face lined with grief that had never faded. When Holland showed his badge, she let him in without hesitation. You're here about Tyler. You know what happened to Claire Brennan? I saw the news. The reporters are calling it a domestic dispute, but I know better. Patricia led him to the living room, pulled out a photo album. This was my daughter. Amy Carson had been beautiful, blonde, bright smile, full of life in every picture. Then Patricia showed him photos from the last 6 months of Amy's life. The smile faded. The light in her eyes dimmed. In the final pictures, Amy looked haunted. Tyler did this to her, Patricia said. He isolated her from friends, controlled her money, told her she was crazy, that she imagined things. By the end, he believed him. She thought she was losing her mind. Did she ever report abuse? Once filed a police report after he pushed her downstairs. But Tyler convinced everyone she was unstable, said she was addicted to prescription pills. The police dropped it. Holland wrote notes carefully. What about the suicide? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. My daughter did not kill herself. She called me the night before she died. She was happy, excited. She'd decided to leave Tyler. She'd packed bags, hired a lawyer, was ready to file a restraining order the next morning. Her voice broke. Then suddenly she was dead. Overdose of pills she didn't take. A suicide note in handwriting that looked like hers but wasn't quite right. You contested the insurance. We fought for months. Tyler's lawyers were better. Eventually we settled because we couldn't afford to keep fighting. But I never believed it was suicide. Patricia grabbed Holland's hand. Detective, please, don't let him get away with it again. Holland left with copies of everything Patricia had saved. medical records, the original police report, photos of Amy's bruises, even samples of her handwriting. Back at the station, he called in a handwriting expert, compared Amy's suicide note to Claire's statement from 2 years ago when she'd applied for a marriage license. The expert studied both for 20 minutes. Look at the letter formations, the slant. These were written by the same person, not the women who supposedly wrote them. No, someone practiced their handwriting. Got close, but not perfect. See here, the loop on the lowercase g. Both notes have the exact same formation, but neither woman naturally wrote that way. Holland felt electricity run through him. Tyler wrote both suicide notes, planned both murders. You'd need more evidence to prove that in court, but yes, I believe these were written by the same person, and neither of them was written by Amy Carson or Claire Brennan. Holland's next stop was Tyler's workplace. Sterling and Cross Investment Bank occupied 3 floors of a Hartford high-rise. Tyler's office was on the top floor, corner view, expensive furniture, the office of someone who'd made it, or someone pretending to. Tyler's assistant was waiting, Jessica Palmer. 29, attractive, perfectly professional. Holland had read her statement to the responding officers. She'd claimed to be in the office during the assault, nowhere near the Brennan house, but Holland had checked phone records. Jessica's cell had pinged off towers near the Brennan estate that night. She'd lied. Miss Palmer, I have some follow-up questions. Jessica's professional mask slipped for just a second. Of course, happy to help. Where were you last night between 10 p.m. and midnight? At home, I left the gala early, went home, went to bed. Your phone records say different. Her face went pale. I stopped for gas, drove around for a while, couldn't sleep, drove around near the Brennan estate. I wasn't. Holland leaned forward. Miss Palmer, lying to police in a felony investigation is obstruction of justice. That's 5 years in prison. But cooperating with an investigation that shows good judgment, smart people cooperate. Jessica's hands trembled. She looked toward Tyler's office. Empty now. He said nobody would get hurt. Who said Tyler? He told me it was just insurance fraud, that Claire would sign divorce papers, take a settlement, disappear to Europe. Nobody would get hurt. It was just business. Her voice rose. I didn't know he was going to beat her. I swear I didn't know. Holland kept his expression neutral. What exactly was your role? I helped set things up. The life insurance policy, the offshore accounts. I thought it was just divorce fraud. Rich people do it all the time to hide assets from each other. Jessica was crying now. Then last night he called me, said there'd been an accident, that Claire fell. I didn't believe him. But by then you were an accomplice. She nodded miserably. Here's what's going to happen. Holland said, you're going to tell me everything. Every conversation, every document, every plan. And in exchange, I'll talk to the DA about a plea deal. But you hold back even one detail, and you go down with Tyler. Understood. Jessica told him everything. Tyler had been planning this for 8 months. The embezzlement from Brennan Industries was just the start. He'd stolen from other clients too, moving money through shell companies. When Richard started investigating, Tyler accelerated his timeline. The plan was to force Claire to sign divorce papers giving him $20 million and full custody of the baby, then stage her suicide. He showed me the suicide note, Jessica said. He'd practiced her handwriting for months. It was perfect. The plan was to make it look like postpartum depression. No one questions that. And if she refused to sign, he said he had backup plans, that he'd stage an accident, make it look like she fell or overdosed. Jessica looked sick. I thought he was exaggerating. Being dramatic, I never thought he'd actually beat his pregnant wife nearly to death. She flinched. Is the baby okay? No thanks to you. Holland left with Jessica's full statement and a promise to testify. It wasn't enough yet to arrest Tyler, but the net was tightening. His phone rang. Richard Brennan. Claire's awake. Claire drifted in darkness. Voices echoed around her, distorted and strange. Pain radiated through her body in waves. She tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids felt impossibly heavy. Claire, sweetheart, can you hear me? Her father's voice. She tried to respond. managed only a small sound. She's waking up, doctor. More voices, bright light stabbing through her eyelids. She forced her eyes open. White ceiling, hospital, her father's face hovering above her, tears streaming down his cheeks. Dad, she whispered. Oh, thank God, thank God. Richard gripped her hand. You're safe now. You're in the hospital. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. Memory crashed back. Tyler, the iPad, the confession, the golf club. Claire tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. Don't move. You have broken ribs, a concussion. You need to stay still. The baby. Claire's hand went to her stomach, found only bandages. Horror flooded through her. Where's my baby? She's alive. She's in the NICU. They had to deliver her early because of the trauma. She's tiny, but she's fighting. Richard's voice broke. She's beautiful. Claire, just like you. Claire started crying. Tyler tried to kill us. I know. The police know. Detective Holland is here. He needs to talk to you, but only if you're strong enough. I'm strong enough. Detective Holland entered, his face kind but serious. Mrs. Brennan, I'm very sorry about what happened to you. I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me everything you remember. Claire told him every word Tyler had said, the emails, the insurance policy, Amy Carson, the threat against Nathan. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. This was her chance, maybe her only chance. He said he'd kill Nathan if I told anyone. Is Nathan safe? Your brother is fine. Your father has security on him. But Mrs. Brennan, I need to ask, are you certain Tyler said he planned to kill you? Yes, he described it, said it would look like postpartum depression, that he'd practiced on Amy Carson. Holland's expression darkened. That matches what we've found. Tyler's assistant, Jessica Palmer, is cooperating with our investigation. She's admitted to helping him set up the fraud. We also have evidence he killed Amy Carson 3 years ago using the same method he planned for you. Then arrest him. We're building the case. But Mrs. Brennan, I need you to know something. Tyler is claiming you attacked him, that he defended himself and you fell. His lawyers are good. They're already spinning this as a tragic accident, maybe even mutual combat. Claire felt cold. People will believe him. Some will. Rich, successful banker versus emotionally unstable pregnant woman. It's a story people have heard before. But we have evidence now. Jessica's testimony, the insurance policies, the connection to Amy Carson. And most importantly, we have you. What do I need to do? Testify. Tell the truth. Let the jury see what he is. A nurse entered. Detective, she needs rest. Holland nodded, stood. Mrs. Brennan, one more thing. Tyler is requesting to visit you. He's playing the concerned husband. We can deny him access, but eventually he'll get a court order. Don't let him near me. We won't. But be prepared. He's going to try to intimidate you. Maybe through lawyers, maybe through the media. He'll claim you're lying, that you're crazy, that this is all a misunderstanding. Can you handle that? Claire thought about everything Tyler had taken from her. Her trust, her safety, nearly her life, nearly her daughter's life. But he hadn't won. She was still alive, still fighting. I can handle it. After Holland left, her mother Olivia arrived. She rushed to Claire's bedside, sobbing. My baby, my sweet girl. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have known. It's not your fault, Mom. I defended him. When your father said something was wrong, I told him he was being paranoid. Olivia's face was anguished. I brought that monster into our family. He fooled everyone. That's what he does. Nathan arrived next, his face pale. Claire, Jesus, Claire. He pulled a chair close, took her hand carefully. Dad told me everyone, we're doing. Tyler threatened to kill me. He had someone watching you, said if I told anyone, you'd die. Nathan's expression hardened. Where is he now? Nathan, don't let the police handle it. He tried to murder my sister, my niece. He threatened me, and he's walking around free. Not for long, Richard said from the doorway. Detective Holland is presenting the case to the district attorney this afternoon. They're going to charge him with attempted murder, fraud, and a dozen other crimes. By tonight, Tyler will be under arrest. But the hours passed and no arrest came. Holland called at 8 p.m. with bad news. The DA wants more evidence. Tyler's lawyers are claiming everything is circumstantial. Jessica's testimony isn't enough by itself. The insurance policies prove intent to defraud but not intent to murder. And without physical evidence placing Tyler as the aggressor, they're worried about conviction. What about what Claire told you? Richard demanded. Her word against his. His lawyers will destroy her on the stand, claim pregnancy hormones, mental instability, vindictive wife. The DA wants the case to be airtight before filing charges. Richard hung up, his face dark with rage. For the first time in his life, his money and power weren't enough. Tyler was slipping through the cracks. That night, Claire watched the news from her hospital bed. Tyler was giving an interview outside their home. "I love my wife," he said, tears streaming down his face. "What happened was a terrible accident. Claire has been under tremendous stress with the pregnancy. I'm worried about her mental state. I just want her to get help." The reporter nodded sympathetically. "There are reports of domestic violence." Completely false. Claire became paranoid, accused me of things that never happened. When I tried to calm her down, she attacked me. I defended myself. She fell. It was horrible, but it wasn't abuse. It was a tragedy. Claire felt sick. He was convincing. She could see it in the reporter's face. In the comments scrolling across the screen, people believed him. Her father saw her expression. "Don't watch this." They believe him. Not everyone, and not for long. We're going to prove what he is. But Claire felt the walls closing in. Tyler was free, building his defense, turning public opinion, and she was trapped in a hospital bed, too weak to fight back. That night, she had a nightmare. Tyler standing over her with the golf club, his voice saying, "You were never supposed to survive." She woke screaming. A nurse rushed in, calmed her down. "You're safe. You're in the hospital." But Claire didn't feel safe. Tyler was still out there, still dangerous, and according to Detective Holland, still untouchable. Until they found the proof they needed, he'd won. Richard Brennan stood in his office at 3 a.m., staring at evidence spread across his desk. Financial records, phone logs, insurance documents, everything pointed to Tyler's guilt. But as Holland had said, pointing wasn't proving. He needed something definitive, something undeniable. His phone rang. "Nathan, Dad, you need to see this." 20 minutes later, Nathan arrived with his laptop. "I've been going through Claire's cloud storage. She uploaded everything automatically. Photos, text, voice memos. Most of it's normal stuff. But look at this." He pulled up an audio file, dated 2 weeks before the attack. Claire's voice, shaky and scared. "Tyler, you're hurting me. Let go." Then Tyler's voice, cold and menacing. "Don't ever question me again. Do you understand? If you tell anyone about this, I'll make sure you regret it. Your family, your friends, everyone you love. I'll destroy them." "That's admission of abuse," Richard said. "There's more." Nathan played another clip, this one from a week before the attack. Tyler on the phone, not knowing Claire was recording. "Yeah, the policy is in place. 15 million. All I need is the right timing." "No, she won't suspect anything. She's too stupid. By Christmas, this will all be over." Richard felt his blood run cold. "Send these to Holland, now." But when Holland heard the recordings, his response wasn't what Richard expected. "These help, but they don't prove attempted murder." A good defense attorney will claim Tyler was talking about divorce, not murder. The context is vague enough to create reasonable doubt. "You're telling me these recordings aren't enough. I'm telling you we need Tyler to confess. On tape. Explicitly. We need him to admit he planned to kill Claire. Anything less, and he walks. So we make him confess." Holland was quiet for a moment. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we give Tyler exactly what he wants. Make him think he's won. Make him feel safe. And when his guard is down, we get the truth." "Mr. Brennan, I can't authorize entrapment." "Then don't authorize it. I'll handle this myself." Richard spent the next 3 days planning. He studied Tyler's patterns. his psychology, his weaknesses. Tyler was arrogant, convinced of his own brilliance. He thought he'd beaten the system. That confidence would be his downfall. The trap was simple. Richard would offer Tyler money, a lot of money, enough to make all his problems disappear. In exchange, Tyler would sign away all rights to Claire and the baby. No custody, no visitation, no claims on the Brennan fortune. But the meeting would be recorded. Every word. Richard called Tyler directly. "We need to talk. Privately." "I don't think that's wise. Richard, your daughter has made serious accusations. My daughter is traumatized and confused. I want to resolve this quietly, for everyone's sake. Can we meet?" Silence on the line. Richard could almost hear Tyler thinking, calculating. "Where?" "My office. Tomorrow night, 8 p. Come alone." Tyler agreed. Detective Holland helped Richard set up the equipment, cameras hidden in the walls, microphones in the furniture, everything high quality, everything admissible in court. "If he admits anything incriminating, I can use this," Holland said. "But you need to get him talking, really talking. Make him feel superior. Men like Tyler love to brag." "I understand." "And Richard, be careful. Tyler is dangerous. If he realizes this is a setup, things could go bad fast. I'll have officers nearby. But I can handle Tyler Brennan." The next night, Tyler arrived exactly on time. He wore an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled. He looked like a man without a care in the world. "Richard, thank you for reaching out." Tyler's handshake was firm, confident. "Let's talk in my office." They sat across from each other. Richard poured 2 glasses of scotch, his hands steady despite his racing heart. "I'll get straight to the point," Richard said. "I want this situation to go away. The publicity is damaging my company. The police investigation is disruptive. I'm prepared to make you a generous offer." Tyler sipped his drink. "I'm listening." $20 million. In exchange, you sign a settlement agreement. No custody claims, no contact with Claire or the baby. You disappear from our lives. That's a lot of money. It's cheaper than a prolonged legal battle. And frankly, Tyler, it's what you wanted all along, isn't it? The money. Something flickered in Tyler's eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I know you married my daughter for her money. I've known it from the beginning. You're a competent banker, but not exceptional. You needed the Brennan name to open doors. And when that wasn't enough, you started stealing." Tyler's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened on the glass. "I know about the embezzlement," Richard continued. $3 million from my company, another $2 million from clients at Sterling and Cross. You've been moving money for months, setting up your exit strategy. The insurance policy on Claire was just the final piece. You can't prove any of that." "I can, but I don't want to. Bad publicity for everyone. So I'm offering you an out. Take the money, sign the papers, walk away. Otherwise, I destroy you. Every theft, every fraud, every lie exposed. You'll spend the next 20 years in prison." Tyler set down his glass slowly. "You think I'm stupid. I think you're practical. This is business. Tyler, take the deal. What if I don't want to leave Claire? What if I love my wife? Then explain the emails to Jessica Palmer, the plans to kill Claire, the connection to Amy Carson." Tyler's mask slipped, just for a second. "You've been busy. So have the police. They know everything. Tyler, the fraud, the insurance scheme, Amy's murder. The only question is whether you go to prison or whether you take my money and disappear. Your choice." Tyler stood, walked to the window. For a long moment, he said nothing. Richard's heart pounded. This was the moment. Either Tyler would confess or the trap would fail. Finally, Tyler laughed. "You really think you've won, don't you? I think I've given you a way out." "No, you've given me exactly what I wanted." Tyler turned, and his expression was pure malice. "Do you want to know the truth, Richard? The real truth. I never loved Claire Bumba, not for 1 second. She was a means to an end, a vehicle to the Brennan fortune. And when that vehicle became inconvenient, I decided to trade it in." "So you admit you planned to kill her?" "Of course I planned it. Months of preparation. The insurance policy, the offshore accounts, even the fake affair with Jessica, all of it designed to make Claire look unstable, to give me motive for divorce and justification for her tragic death. Tyler's smile was chilling. Amy Carson was practice. I learned from that experience. With Claire, I was going to turn perfect. No mistakes, no evidence, just a grieving widower collecting his inheritance. Richard forced himself to stay calm. But Claire survived. She did, which was unexpected, but not disastrous. I have backups, plans within plans. Even if I go to trial, I'll win. My lawyers are better than the DA's office. I'll claim self-defense, paint Claire as an unhinged pregnant woman who attacked me. Juries love that narrative. Crazy wife, reasonable husband, and the baby to prison. Collateral damage. If she lives, fine. If not, even better. Less complicated for custody issues. Tyler walked back to the desk, leaned forward. You want to know what's really funny? Richard, you sat at my wedding, called me son, welcomed me into your family, and the whole time I was planning how to destroy you, not just steal your money, but break your family, leave you devastated and powerless. Why what though? Because men like you think you're untouchable, born rich, never struggled for anything. You look at people like me, who had to fight for every advantage, and you see us as less than. I wanted to prove I could beat you at your own game. And I did. Richard stood slowly. Is that your confession? Tyler's smile faded. What? I asked if that was your confession, because every word you just said was recorded. Audio and video. The police are listening right now. And Tyler? Richard's voice turned to ice. You're under arrest. The office doors burst open. Detective Holland and 4 officers rushed in. Tyler spun, reaching for something in his jacket. An officer tackled him before he could draw whatever he was reaching for. Tyler Brennan, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. Holland read him his rights while officers cuffed him. Tyler thrashed, screaming, This is entrapment illegal. My lawyers will destroy this, not entrapment. Holland said calmly. You came here voluntarily. No one coerced your confession. You just couldn't help bragging. He looked at Richard. Good work. As they dragged Tyler out, he locked eyes with Richard. This isn't over. I'll get out. And when I do, Claire dies. I promise you that. Richard stepped closer, his voice deadly quiet. If you ever get near my daughter again, the police won't be the ones you worry about. I'll handle you myself. And unlike you, I keep my promises. Tyler was still screaming threats as they pushed him into the elevator. Richard collapsed into his chair, his hands shaking. It was done. The monster was caught. His phone rang. Claire, I said, Dad, Detective Holland just called. He said Tyler confessed. He did. It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now. Claire started crying. I can't believe it's real. It's real. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. But even as Richard said the words, he knew it wasn't truly over. Tyler had promised revenge, and Richard believed him. 3 months later, Tyler Brennan's trial became the media sensation of the year. Every news channel covered it. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. The case had everything: wealth, betrayal, attempted murder, an innocent baby fighting for life. Claire had recovered physically, though the scars ran deeper than anyone could see. She attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row with her father beside her. Nathan and Olivia flanked them, a family united against the man who tried to destroy them. Baby Hope was home now, healthy despite her traumatic entrance into the world. She was with a nanny during court hours, but Claire left every day at lunch to nurse her. Those moments, holding her daughter, were the only times Claire felt truly safe. The prosecution's case was devastating. Jessica Palmer testified first, describing in detail how Tyler had planned the fraud, how he'd practiced Claire's handwriting, how he'd bragged about killing Amy Carson and getting away with it. He said it was easy. Jessica testified, her voice shaking, said women were easy targets because everyone assumes they're emotional and unstable. He said the key was making them doubt themselves first. Tyler's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Wells, cross-examined aggressively. But you participated in this fraud, didn't you, Miss Palmer? You helped set up the accounts. You knew about the insurance policy? I thought it was divorce fraud. I didn't know he was going to hurt her. But you knew something illegal was happening. And you helped anyway. For money, correct? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Despite the aggressive defense, Jessica's testimony was damning. But the prosecution's strongest evidence was yet to come. Detective Holland took the stand, describing the investigation. The physical evidence, the blood spatter analysis proving Claire had been beaten while lying on the floor, not fallen downstairs. The golf club with Tyler's fingerprints and Claire's blood, the insurance policies, the connection to Amy Carson's death. Then they played the recording. Tyler's voice filled the courtroom. I never loved Claire, not for 1 second. She was a means to an end. Amy Carson was practice. With Claire, I was going to be perfect. No mistakes, no evidence. Just a grieving widower collecting his inheritance. The jury sat frozen. Several looked sick. One woman was crying. Tyler's lawyer objected. That recording was obtained through manipulation. My client was tricked into speaking. But Judge Patricia Monroe denied the objection. Mr. Brennan came to that meeting voluntarily. No one coerced him. He chose to confess. The prosecution rested. Tyler's defense was predictable. They claimed Claire had attacked him, that she'd been emotionally unstable throughout the pregnancy. They presented texts where Claire had questioned Tyler about his whereabouts, painting her as paranoid and controlling. They called Tyler to testify in his own defense. He was perfect on the stand, calm, articulate, sympathetic. He described a marriage that had deteriorated, a wife who became increasingly jealous and irrational, a pregnancy that exacerbated her mental health issues. I loved Claire, Tyler said, his voice breaking. I still do. What happened that night was horrible, but it wasn't what the prosecution claims. Claire found some emails that were taken out of context. She attacked me, I defended myself. She fell. It was an accident. And the recording, the prosecutor asked on cross-examination, where you confessed to planning her murder. I was angry. Richard Brennan was trying to pay me off, threatened to destroy me. I said things I didn't mean. Exaggerated. I was defending my reputation, not confessing to a crime. You said Amy Carson was practice. I was being sarcastic. Cruel, yes, but not literal. Amy's death was a tragedy, but it was suicide. The police investigated and found no evidence of foul play. Until now, Tyler met the prosecutor's eyes. I didn't kill Amy. I didn't try to kill Claire. I'm guilty of being a bad husband, of saying terrible things in anger. But I'm not a murderer. For a moment, Claire felt doubt creep in. Tyler was so convincing. What if the jury believed him? Then it was Claire's turn to testify. She walked to the stand slowly, her legs shaking. Every eye in the courtroom followed her. Tyler watched with an expression of concern perfectly calibrated for the cameras. The prosecutor was gentle with her questions. Claire described the marriage, how Tyler had gradually isolated her from friends, controlled her money, monitored her phone, made her doubt her own reality. He told me I was imagining the affair, Claire said, that I was crazy, that pregnancy hormones made me paranoid. I started to believe him. I thought maybe I was losing my mind. What happened the night of the attack? Claire took a deep breath. I found emails between Tyler and Jessica Palmer. They detailed a plan. After the baby was born, Tyler would force me to sign divorce papers. If I refused, he said Nathan would die. Then I would have an accident. He described it all very calmly, like he was discussing a business deal. Then what happened? He hit me with a golf club, over and over. I begged him to stop, told him about the baby. He said, Claire's voice broke. He said maybe losing the baby would teach me obedience. The courtroom was silent. Tyler's lawyer cross-examined. Mrs. Brennan, you've been very emotional throughout this trial. Is it possible your memory of that night is confused? Trauma can distort recollection. My memory is clear. You suffered a severe head injury. The doctors said you had a concussion. Memory loss is common with concussions. I remember every word he said. Or perhaps you remember what you've convinced yourself happened. Perhaps in reality, it was an accident, and you've constructed this narrative to justify your feelings. Claire looked directly at the jury. I have 3 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone. Permanent hearing loss in my left ear from where the club hit my head. My daughter was born 2 months premature and spent 8 weeks in the NICU. Does that sound like an accident? The defense had no response. Closing arguments came 2 days later. The prosecutor was powerful. Tyler Brennan is a predator. He targets successful women, marries them, isolates them, then kills them for money. He did it to Amy Carson. He tried to do it to Claire Brennan. He planned every detail. And when caught, he confessed on tape. The evidence is overwhelming. Tyler Brennan is guilty. Tyler's lawyer countered. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is a monster. But where's the proof? A recording obtained through manipulation. A supposed confession that could be interpreted multiple ways. My client is guilty of being a bad husband, of saying cruel things. But bad husbands aren't murderers. Without direct evidence that Tyler intended to kill Claire, you must acquit. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Claire couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She held hope constantly, whispering promises that mommy would keep her safe. But what if Tyler walked free? What if his lawyers had won on the 3rd day? The jury returned. The courtroom was packed. Media filled every seat. Richard held Claire's hand as the foreman stood. On the charge of attempted murder in the 1st degree, we find the defendant guilty. Claire collapsed against her father, sobbing. On the charge of fraud, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, guilty. Guilty on all 23 counts. Tyler's face went white. For the first time, his mask completely dropped. He looked at Claire with pure hatred. Security moved closer as he half rose from his seat. Judge Monroe's voice cut through the courtroom. Mr. Brennan, you will face sentencing in 2 weeks. Until then, you are remanded to custody without bail. This court is adjourned. As they led Tyler away in handcuffs, he turned back one last time. His lips moved, forming words only Claire could see. I'll get out, and when I do. But Richard stepped between them, blocking Tyler's view of his daughter. Never, Richard said quietly. Tyler was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Claire stood with her father and gave a brief statement. Justice has been served today. But this isn't just about one man. It's about believing survivors. It's about recognizing that abuse wears many faces. It can look like love. It can look like concern. It can look like a perfect marriage. But underneath, it's always about control. And control is never love. The reporters shouted questions. But Claire was done. She'd said what she needed to say. Now she just wanted to go home to her daughter. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Monroe showed no mercy. Mr. Brennan, you are a danger to society. You targeted vulnerable women, exploited their trust, and attempted to murder them for financial gain. You show no remorse, no empathy, no humanity. I sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole for 50 years. Additionally, you are sentenced to 20 years for fraud, to be served consecutively. You will never walk free again. Tyler's face was stone. I'm innocent. No, Mr. Brennan, you're guilty, and now you'll pay the price. As they led him away for the last time, Tyler looked at Claire one final time, but she didn't flinch, didn't look away. She met his gaze steadily, unafraid. He'd tried to destroy her, and he'd failed. The victory felt hollow. Claire stood in the nursery she'd designed before everything fell apart. Soft yellow walls, hand-painted murals of clouds and stars. The crib her father had bought, imported from Switzerland. Everything perfect. Everything poisoned by memory. Hope slept peacefully, unaware that her father was a monster. Someday, Claire would have to explain. Someday, Hope would ask why she only had one parent, why Mommy flinched at loud noises, why Grandpa Richard was always so protective. But not today. Richard found her there an hour later. You should be celebrating. Tyler's in prison for life. I know. Then why do you look so sad? Claire touched the crib's railing. Because he still won in some ways. Look at me, Dad. I'm terrified of being alone. I have nightmares every night. I can't let Hope out of my sight for 5 minutes without panicking. Tyler's in prison, but he's still controlling my life. Richard pulled her into a hug. He doesn't control you. PTSD does. And that's not the same thing. You are getting help, seeing a therapist, taking medication, you're doing everything right. It doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm broken. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. But healing was harder than Claire expected. The nightmares intensified. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tyler with the golf club, heard his voice saying she deserved it, felt the impact. Again and again. She started seeing Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a trauma specialist. The sessions were brutal. Dr. Mitchell made her talk about things Claire wanted to forget, made her relive the worst night of her life over and over. "Why are we doing this?" Claire asked during one session. "Tyler's in prison. Why do I have to keep going back to that night?" Because trauma doesn't heal by ignoring it. It heals by processing it, by taking away its power over you. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. "Right now, Tyler still lives in your head. He's there every night in your nightmares. Every time you flinch at a loud noise. Every time you panic when hope cries. We're going to evict him." It took months. Therapy twice a week, support groups with other survivors, medication for the anxiety that made her heart race at random moments. Slowly, painfully, Claire started to reclaim her life. She reopened her art gallery. The first day back, her hands shook so badly she could barely unlock the door. But she did it. Walked inside, turned on the lights, stared at the empty walls waiting for new exhibitions. Her assistant manager, Emma, hugged her. "Welcome back. I'm not sure I'm ready." "Nobody's ever ready, but you're here. That's what matters." Claire threw herself into work, curated a new show, Unbroken, featuring artists who'd survived trauma. The opening night was packed. Survivors came from across Connecticut to see their stories reflected in art. One woman approached Claire. She was in her 40s, stylish, confident. "Thank you for doing this. My ex-husband tried to kill me 3 years ago. I thought I was the only one who couldn't move past it. But seeing all these people, all these stories, I don't feel so alone anymore." Claire hugged her. "You're not alone. None of us are." The gallery show was a success. Media covered it. The message spread. Other survivors reached out, wanting to share their stories. Claire started a foundation, Hope for Survivors, named after her daughter. The foundation provided legal support, therapy funding, and safe housing for domestic violence survivors. Richard donated $10 million to get it started. Other donors followed. Within 6 months, they'd helped 50 women escape abusive relationships. But success didn't erase the pain. Nathan worried about her constantly. He came by every day, checking on her and Hope. One evening, he found Claire sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "Claire, what's wrong?" "I miss who I used to be before Tyler. I was happy, confident, fearless. Now I'm afraid of everything." Nathan sat beside her. "You're still all those things. You just survived something horrible. That changes a person, but it doesn't erase who you were. It adds layers, makes you stronger." "I don't feel strong. You testified against Tyler, started a foundation, reopened your gallery. You're raising hope alone. If that's not strength, I don't know what is." Claire leaned against her brother. "What if I never feel normal again?" "Maybe you won't. Maybe normal is different now. But different doesn't mean big. You're alive. Claire, hope is alive. You won. Don't let Tyler's ghost steal that from you." The words helped. Slowly, day by day, Claire found her footing. The nightmares decreased. The panic attacks became less frequent. She started dating again, though every first date terrified her. What if she missed the warning signs? What if she chose wrong again? Her therapist helped her develop tools, red flags to watch for, patterns of controlling behavior, ways to trust her instincts. "You didn't miss the signs with Tyler," Mitchell explained. "He was exceptionally good at hiding them. Sociopaths are, but you're aware now. You know what to look for. That awareness is your protection." Claire joined a domestic violence survivor support group. Listening to other women's stories helped her understand she wasn't uniquely broken. They all struggled. They all had setbacks, but they all kept fighting. One woman, Sarah, became a close friend. She'd survived an abusive marriage 10 years ago. "Does it ever stop hurting?" Claire asked her. "The acute pain stops, but you never forget. It becomes part of your history, not your present. You'll always be a survivor. But someday you'll be a survivor who's also happy, whole, and at peace. How long did it take you with About 5 years, but everyone's different. Don't rush it. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel great. Some days you'll cry for no reason. Both are normal. Richard watched his daughter rebuild her life with pride and heartbreak. Pride in her strength. Heartbreak that she had to be this strong. He'd stepped down as CEO of Brennan Industries, appointing Nathan to take over. Richard focused on the foundation now, using his business connections to raise money and awareness. One evening, he and Claire attended a fundraising gala. Claire gave a speech about survival, about rebuilding, about hope. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, a reporter approached. "Mrs. Brennan, Tyler's lawyers are filing another appeal. How do you feel about that?" Claire's stomach clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "I feel confident the appeals court will uphold his conviction. The evidence was overwhelming. Tyler Brennan is exactly where he belongs. His lawyer claims you fabricated evidence, that the recording was manipulated. Tyler's lawyer is doing her job, but the truth doesn't change because someone denies it. Tyler confessed. Multiple witnesses testified. A jury found him guilty. His appeals will fail." But that night, Claire had the worst nightmare in months. Tyler breaking out of prison, finding her, finishing what he started. She woke screaming. Hope woke too, crying. Claire held her daughter, both of them trembling. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's okay. We're safe." But were they? Myler was locked up, but his shadow remained. His threats echoed. "I'll get out, and when I do." Claire called Dr. Mitchell the next morning. "The appeal filing triggered me. I thought I was past this." Trauma doesn't disappear. Claire, it gets managed. What Tyler did to you will always be part of your history. These setbacks are normal. The important thing is you're not letting it stop you. You're still moving forward. "I'm tired of moving forward. I want to just be still. Be happy. Not always fighting." Then let's work on that. Finding moments of peace instead of constant vigilance. You've spent a year surviving. Maybe it's time to start living. The words resonated. Claire realized she'd been so focused on not being a victim that she'd forgotten to just be a person. A mother. A woman with dreams beyond survival. She started small. Morning walks with Hope. Painting again. Something she'd loved before Tyler. Coffee with friends without analyzing every interaction for danger signs. Gradually, bam, life expanded beyond just getting through each day. One morning, 6 months after the trial, Claire woke without fear. The sun was shining, Hope was babbling in her crib, and for the first time in 18 months, Claire's first thought wasn't about Tyler. It was about what to make for breakfast. Small victory, enormous triumph. She picked up Hope, kissed her daughter's cheek. "Good morning, sunshine. Today's going to be a good day." And it was. The victory felt hollow. Claire stood in the nursery she'd designed before everything fell apart. Soft yellow walls, hand-painted murals of clouds and stars. The crib her father had bought, imported from Switzerland. Everything perfect. Everything poisoned by memory. Hope slept peacefully, unaware that her father was a monster. 6 months old now, healthy despite her traumatic entrance into the world. Claire watched her daughter's chest rise and fall, each breath a miracle. Richard found her there. "You should be celebrating. Tyler's in prison for life." "I know. Then why do you look so sad?" Claire touched the crib's railing. "Because he still won in some ways. Look at me. Dad, I'm terrified of being alone. I have nightmares every night. I can't let Hope out of my sight for 5 minutes without panicking. Tyler's in prison, but he's still controlling my life." Richard pulled her into a hug. "He doesn't control you. PTSD does. And that's not the same thing. You're getting help, seeing a therapist. You're doing everything right. It doesn't feel right, and it feels like I'm broken. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." But healing was harder than Claire expected. The nightmares intensified. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tyler with the golf club, heard his voice saying she deserved it, felt the impact. Again and again. 3 weeks after the sentencing, a letter arrived. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single page in neat handwriting. "Dear Claire, I've thought about you every day since the trial. You lied on the stand. You manipulated evidence. You destroyed my life. But here's what you don't know, and I'm not done with you. I'm planning my appeal. I'm finding new evidence. And when I get out, I'm coming for you and that baby. You should have died that night. I'll make sure you don't get a second chance. Love, Tyler. Claire's hands shook so badly she dropped the letter. Hope started crying, sensing her mother's distress. Claire picked her up, held her tight, trying to keep her own panic from transferring to her daughter. She called Detective Holland immediately. "We'll trace the letter," Holland said. "But Claire, this is a felony. Threatening a witness, violating prison communication rules. This actually helps us. Tyler just added years to his sentence. He's threatening my daughter." "I know, and we'll use this to ensure he never gets out. Prison officials will investigate how he sent this. He's in maximum security. Someone helped him." The investigation revealed that a corrupt guard had smuggled the letter out for $2,000. Tyler had been planning this for months, saving money from his prison commissary account, making connections with guards willing to break rules. The guard was fired and charged. Tyler lost all privileges, was moved to solitary confinement, but the damage was done. Claire's hard-won peace shattered. She started seeing Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a trauma specialist. The sessions were brutal. "Why are we doing this?" Claire asked during one session. "Tyler's in prison. Why do I have to keep going back to that night?" "Because trauma doesn't heal by ignoring it. It heals by processing it, by taking away its power over you." Mitchell leaned forward. "Right now, Tyler still lives in your head. He's there every night in your nightmares. Every time you flinch at a loud noise, we're going to evict him." It took months. Therapy twice a week, support groups with other survivors, medication for the anxiety that made her heart race at random moments. Claire joined a domestic violence survivor support group where she met other women fighting the same battles. One woman, Sarah, became a friend. She'd survived an abusive marriage years ago. "Does it ever stop hurting?" Claire asked her. "The acute pain stops, but you never forget. It becomes part of your history, not your present. You'll always be a survivor, but someday you'll be a survivor who's also happy, whole, and at peace." "How long did it take you?" "A few years. But everyone's different. Don't rush it. Healing isn't linear." Claire threw herself into rebuilding. She reopened her art gallery with a new exhibition called Unbroken, featuring artists who'd survived trauma. The opening night was packed. Survivors came from across Connecticut to see their stories reflected in art. One woman approached Claire. She was in her 40s, stylish, confident. "Thank you for doing this. My ex-husband tried to kill me 3 years ago. Seeing all these people, all these stories, I don't feel so alone anymore." Claire hugged her. "You're not alone. None of us are." Richard watched his daughter rebuild with pride and heartbreak. Pride in her strength, heartbreak that she had to be this strong. He'd stepped down as CEO of Brennan Industries, appointing Nathan to take over. Richard focused on something new, a foundation to help domestic violence survivors. "I want to call it Hope for Survivors," he told Claire, "named after my granddaughter. We'll provide legal support, therapy funding, safe housing, everything you needed and more." "Dad, that's going to cost millions." "I have millions, and I can't think of a better way to spend them." The foundation launched 3 months after Tyler's sentencing. Richard donated $10 million to start. Other donors followed. Within 6 months, they'd helped 75 women escape abusive relationships. But Claire still struggled. Nathan worried about her constantly. One evening, he found her sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "Claire, what's wrong?" "I miss who I used to be. Before Tyler, I was happy, confident, fearless. Now I'm afraid of everything." Nathan sat beside her. "You're still all those things. You testified against Tyler, started helping other survivors, reopened your gallery. You're raising hope alone. If that's not strength, I don't know what is." "I don't feel strong." A father never stops protecting his child, even when she no longer needs him to. "You're stronger than you think." Slowly, painfully, Claire found her footing again. The nightmares decreased. The panic attacks became less frequent. She started painting again, something she'd loved before Tyler. One morning, 8 months after the trial, Claire woke without fear. The sun was shining. Hope was babbling in her crib. And for the first time since that terrible night, Claire's first thought wasn't about Tyler. It was about breakfast. Small victory, enormous triumph. She picked up Hope, kissed her daughter's cheek. Good morning, sunshine. Mama's here, and we're going to be okay. That afternoon, Claire gave her first public speech at a domestic violence awareness event, standing before 200 people. She told her story. Not all of it. Not the worst parts, but enough. Tyler Brennan tried to destroy me, she said. He almost succeeded, but I'm still here, still fighting. And if I can survive, so can anyone listening who's in danger right now. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are believed. And there is help. The applause was deafening. Afterward, a young woman approached, tears streaming down her face. My boyfriend is like Tyler. I've been too scared to leave, but hearing your story, I think I can do it. Claire took her hands. You can, and you don't have to do it alone. The foundation will help. We'll find you housing, legal support, protection. You just have to take the first step. The woman nodded. 3 days later, she called the foundation's hotline. A week after that, she was in a safe house, away from her abuser, starting over. This was the work now. One woman at a time, one life saved, one survivor empowered. Richard joined Claire for coffee one weekend. You've built something remarkable already. The foundation is making a real difference. It's what Tyler's cruelty created. Purpose from pain. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you'd never met him? Claire considered. Sometimes, but I wouldn't have hope. I wouldn't be doing this work. I wouldn't have learned how strong I really am. Tyler thought he was destroying me. Instead, he forged me into something he could never break. That night, Hope had a fever. Nothing serious, but Claire stayed up all night anyway, monitoring her temperature, giving medicine, holding her when she cried, being a mother, being strong. As dawn broke, Claire looked out the window at the city waking up. Somewhere in a prison cell, Tyler was waking too, alone, powerless, exactly where he belonged. She'd survived hell, and she'd keep surviving, one day at a time, until the memory of that night no longer had the power to make her afraid. Because survivors don't break, they rebuild. 1 year after the trial, though, Claire stood at the podium of the National Domestic Violence Conference. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from purpose. My name is Claire Brennan, she began. 1 year ago, my husband tried to murder me and our unborn child. Today, I stand before you not just as a survivor, but as proof that trauma doesn't have to be the end of your story. She told her story, the manipulation, the violence, the fear, Tyler's conviction, her journey through healing. People ask me if I've forgiven Tyler, Claire said. The answer is no. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. I don't forgive him, but I also don't hate him anymore. Hate requires energy I'd rather spend on living. Tyler took enough from me. He won't take another moment. The audience of 3,000 sat in absolute silence. To the survivors in this room, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are warriors who survived a war. And like all warriors, you carry scars. But scars are proof of healing, not damage. To the advocates, thank you. Your work saves lives. Every phone call you answer, every survivor you help, you are changing the world. And to the lawmakers, do more. Fund shelters, train police, close legal loopholes that let abusers escape justice. Make it easier for survivors to leave and harder for abusers to hurt. Claire paused, her voice strengthening. Tyler Brennan tried to destroy me. Instead, he created something unstoppable. A survivor who refuses to be silent. A foundation that helps thousands. A movement demanding change. That's the thing about trying to break strong women. We don't break, we evolve. We become something fiercer. Something the world can't ignore. Tyler Brennan is serving life in prison. He will die there, but I'm alive. Hope is alive, and we're thriving. That's justice. That's victory. That's everything he tried to prevent and couldn't. The audience erupted. Standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Women were crying, embracing, finding strength in shared experience. Backstage, reporters waited. Claire answered questions for an hour, then went home to Hope. Their house was different now. Claire had moved from the mansion where the attack happened. Too many ghosts. Now they lived in a bright, open home filled with art and laughter. Olivia and Richard lived nearby. Nathan and Jennifer visited often. That evening, Claire tucked Hope into bed. Her daughter was 18 months old now. Walking, talking, full of joy in life. "Mama, sing," Hope demanded. Claire sang a lullaby, stroking her daughter's hair. When Hope's eyes closed, Claire whispered, "You'll never know the darkness I escaped from, sweetheart, because I'll make sure of it. You'll grow up safe, loved, free." She checked the security system one last time, then went to her art studio. She'd been working on a new painting, dark colors at the bottom, representing the violence and fear, gradually transforming into light at the top, broken shapes becoming whole. It was called Rising. Her phone buzzed. Detective Holland. "Claire, I thought you'd want to know. Tyler's final appeal was denied today. The life sentence is final. He can't appeal again." Claire felt a weight she didn't know she'd been carrying finally lift. "It's really over. It's really over. He's going to die in that prison cell." After hanging up, Claire walked to Hope's room, watched her daughter sleep peacefully, thought about the woman she used to be. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, hard but unbroken. The next morning brought another email. A woman named Maria had seen Claire's speech online. She was trapped in an abusive marriage, didn't know how to escape. Was the offer of help real? Claire called her immediately. "It's real. Tell me where you are." 2 days later, Maria and her children were in a foundation safe house, away from her abuser. Safe, starting over. This was the work. One woman at a time, one life changed. Richard visited that weekend. They sat on the back porch watching Hope play in the yard, chasing butterflies, laughing without fear. "You've built something remarkable," Richard said. "The foundation has helped over 200 women in 1 year. It's just the beginning. There are thousands more who need help. You can't save everyone, Claire." "No, but I can save someone, and that someone can help someone else. And eventually, we change the world." They sat in comfortable silence. Hope ran over, climbed into Claire's lap. "Mama, butterfly. I see it, baby. It's beautiful." Richard watched his daughter and granddaughter, his heart full. A year ago, he'd stood in a hospital, wondering if he'd lose them both. Now they were here, alive, healing, building something meaningful from tragedy. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. Claire smiled. "I'm proud of me too." That night, after Hope was asleep, Claire wrote in the journal Dr. Mitchell had encouraged her to keep. 1 year ago, I almost died. Tyler nearly succeeded in destroying me, but here I am, alive, thriving, building a life he said I'd never have, raising a daughter he said would never exist, helping survivors he said were too weak to save themselves. I won, not because he's in prison, though that helps. I won because I refused to let his violence define me, because I turned my pain into purpose, because I chose to live instead of just survive. Tyler Brennan tried to murder me. Instead, he created a woman who won't be silent, who won't be intimidated, who built something meaningful from ashes. Every day I wake up is a victory. Every woman we help is justice. Every moment with hope is revenge against everything Tyler tried to take. He wanted to destroy me. Instead, he made me unstoppable. Claire closed the journal, checked on Hope one last time. Her daughter slept peacefully, safe in a home filled with love. Outside, the city lights glowed, somewhere in a prison cell. Tyler sat in darkness, alone, forgotten, exactly where he belonged. Claire smiled. She'd survived the unthinkable, built beauty from horror, and she'd do it again if she had to. Because survivors don't just endure, they transform, they rebuild, they win, and most importantly, they live. Hope lives.